want to go ahead and show you guys what this is doing whenever we do throw the vehicle in reverse. Again, the backup sensors were moved directly from the OE bumper and put into the new Stealth Fighter bumper, exactly how they were setting in the factory bumper. You notice there that we have an issue with the center sensors as well as that driver side sensor. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in on how we can redirect those sensors. Again, they are directional, so that way you can't just flop the sensor themselves. However, we'll see what we can do with the outer sleeve that gives each sensor its tilt and pitch to see if we can get around the placement of these sensors and getting them in a better position to where there's no obstruction to those sensors as soon as you throw it into reverse. So one issue we were having with the Addictive Desert Design bumper is the fact that the center backup sensors are picking up directly into this tire as soon as you throw the vehicle into reverse. The reason for that is because, as you can see, the angle in which the sensor housing is positioning that sensor is sending it directly into the tire. Now, we did talk to Addictive Deserts and they said, well, we didn't have any problems with that, and they should just go right in from the way they were in the factory if you had the one of the OE steel bumpers. Well, we're very meticulous out here, and we moved them over exactly as they sat in the factory bumper, and we have this issue. Now, I did have concern of the issue as soon as we put them in, so we went back and forth between the OE bumper as we were doing this install, and we were just really wanting to make sure and check ourselves that we had them in the right place. Again, we moved them one sensor at a time and made sure that the positioning sleeve was exactly the way it was in the factory bumper. Again, these sensors aren't cheap, and we want you to know that you have to be very careful with them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the time to show you in comparison what a factory bumper looks like in the next clip, so that way you can see a little bit more of what we're talking about between the way these are sitting in the Addictive Desert Design bumper and against the OE positioning the way that they came out before we took them out of the bumper. Okay guys, so what I did is I stopped by one of the dealerships over here near the shop, and I wanted just to show you something. If you notice those sensors, if we're focusing up on the center ones over here, those are actually tilted slightly up and a little bit inward. So what that's going to do is it's actually going to project more so what's going on up here towards the center and higher up. These outer ones, they're not so much off on the same angle. However, they do seem to be a little bit more flat, more perpendicular to the surface. So what's happening is we get these larger tires, and a theory on it is that the fact that the tires are actually, especially depending on the offset that you get, it's protruding into that path of that sensor over here. So let's see what we can do to get this fixed and try a couple tricks. Maybe we can get on the first round. So back to the Addictive Desert Design bumper, we're going to go ahead and have it removed. Now what we did is we put the lights and everything together. We went and made a harness down behind the bumper itself that hangs out between the bumper and the cross member, and it has its own connection. We used a trailer plug, very simple. So this way it'll be a very easy removal. And here in this video we're going to show you also how to properly or safely take out those sensors without breaking them. These sensors run about $200 when I spoke to the dealership. And there are a number of shops that are out there that are being a little bit too aggressive with them and actually damaging the sensors. And a lot of times they don't find out about that until they plug everything back up and back the vehicle up, or just turning on the ignition. There's no communication with that individual sensor that had perhaps incurred damage. So in order to get this started, we're going to go ahead and we're going to disconnect the negative battery cable, so that way the vehicle at no point in time recognizes that the sensors are no longer in connection with the rest of the system. Alright, so we want to bring your attention here to the hole that was put into the bumper itself by Addictive during the manufacturing process. If you notice, there is a small gap here on the bottom and a larger gap on the top. That's because on the OE bumper, it was the exact position of these lining tabs. What I say by lining tabs is if you look on the outer sleeve, this is that one that was on the outside, as you saw, that puts it in a different direction, that sensor itself. If you see here, there are two large lines or guides that create the larger opening. And then on the bottom side was the smaller two lines that are closer together, bringing a closer opening, the smaller one down here. So these would, if you put them in exactly how you found them from the factory bumper, you would essentially put them in like such. However, we saw that when we did this, it was not allowing the sensors to set at a right position, and they were pointing directly into the tires. Spoke to Addictive and they said, well, just go ahead and go in there and position those however you need them. However, if you're looking at the instructions for that, you will not find that in the instructions. Their instructions only talk about, at this time, they only talk about the positioning of sensors that were coming out of a plastic OE bumper, not the steel bumpers that some of you guys may have if you're watching this video. So we're going to go ahead and play with the positioning of this and seeing what we can do to get these in there and putting these sensors to a better position so that way our client can back his vehicle up in peace. An easy way of reference that we're going to try to do this first shot is if you look, there are a set of holes that you can see through there. This is where the actual backing plate is going to lock into it. This is also side specific, as you can see. It's tilted itself. So what we're going to do is align these holes. Not only, if you notice in the clip, we took them from the original position, pull them out, go ahead and align those holes perpendicular or on a vertical axis, and then give them an entire 180 degree turn. And go ahead and push them in. Again, these aren't going to be perfectly aligned. There is no aligning holes for them at this position. So just give them a little bit of push real slightly and they will go right in for you. So if we look at that now, you can see the new position of that sensor. It is slightly outward and it is slightly to the lower side of things. And that way we're hoping we can get a pretty good position of both these sensors now. Okay guys, so we got our first sensor in. It looks like everything went in well. We did have a couple issues. We're going to flip the bumper over now and we're going to talk to you about some of the fixes that we did to make sure that we were able to get these sensors in correctly. Coming back here to the back of the bumper, we're going to be able to see what it's looking like from the back, and what we're looking for here is the actual retaining guide back here is needing to receive its back plate. Now what we did is we actually took the backing tab from the other side and we brought it over here. The reason why we discovered this is because we were having issues with aligning the little tabs that need to lock into place onto this guide. And so what we did is I said, hey, let's just try it. Let's flip them and see what happens. So we took the outer cap from over here and moved it to the passenger side, and everything fit in wonderfully. So let's go ahead and take what was once on the passenger side and we're going to put it over on the driver's side. And again, you're going to have a long side and a short side. Short side now being on top. And everything fits very well. The tabs just go right into place where they want to go. Once you get that ring on, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get your sensor. You have an open side for the communication line as the connector goes out. You'll be very careful pushing these in. Now notice you've got the alignment tabs that are going to also line up with those holes that we talked about earlier from the outside. Once you get these pushed in, just work it real carefully and they will literally slide in and push into place. There you go. Now if we'll go ahead and take a look at what it looks like from the outside, we'll flip the bumper over again and we'll take a look and see how this looks. So here now we see it's not anyways near where it used to be, and it's actually got a nice position that we're hoping will suffice the system. So we're going to go ahead and put the bumper back on and plug it up and check things out. Right before we put the bumper back on, we wanted to catch with you guys on this. Notice that as we reversed the vehicle, we were having issues with the driver's side sensor as well. Not sure what obstructions there were that were causing it issues. Again, we tried it with and without the shackle. However, if you notice, this is what it was. This is the passenger side as it's set before we moved the driver sensor. And this is what we want to show you before. And let's glide across over here and we're going to show you what it is after. Again, this is pointed outward. This sensor, the hole that they provided for this sensor, it actually allows for the outer ring to be located at one position, such as this. This is exactly how they came out of the factory bumper. But as they made the hole for this, you can actually just rotate this exactly 180 degrees, and it has its own guides that Addictive provided in that as well. So we went ahead and just flipped this 180 degrees and reassembled the sensor unit, and this is now what we're sitting at. It does look a little funky. It sets it outward. The only theory I have behind it is that the owner will now have a much better range of sensor detection, and I guess that can't always be a bad thing. So let's try it to the passenger side. We'll get this one flopped around, put it back on the vehicle, and we'll see how she does. All right, everybody, so we went on ahead and we put the bumper back on. We did not torque everything down. We wanted just to make sure that, you know, everything was working right before we went through all the hassle and having to take it apart. So again, remind you, this was the first try that we did. Now we want to make sure that everything's working well, so we're going to go ahead and throw the Jeep in reverse. Now I'll put back there a bench so that way we can see what's going to happen as that bench comes into our view, or comes within our sensor range. Entering the yellow range, yellow range. Getting a little closer. Got the Jeep over there. All right, we're gonna pull forward. Now next we're gonna have Diego go ahead and walk across, see what happens. Perfect. You know, quite frankly, I think these work better than they ever did factory. So let's take a look at the final position that we have all these sensors, and we'll talk to you guys a little bit about why we put them in certain directions, and we'll start with that. All right, everybody, so here we have it. This is the final positioning of those sensors. This outer sensor on both sides is pointed slightly outward now. Remember, we just clocked that 180 degrees, and the holes we're allowing for it in the bumper that Addictive put in there for us. And these center ones now are pointed, rather than a little bit upward and inward, they're now pointed downward and outward just a little bit. So we saw there on the screen, everything looked great. We hope that if you're having this issue, or if you've ran into this question during your install of your bumper, that this can help address that problem. And so we hope everything went well, and we're glad that you were able to join us today in finding some resolution to this problem. So if you could please just give us a subscribe and give a like to this video, and stay tuned for other videos that we put up to help you guys get your Jeep build off to the right start.